This week, we're doing a reading update, otherwise known as SenLinYu in Seattle.
Hi, readers. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Katie.
And welcome to Not Another Heroine, the book pod where we celebrate the heroines we love
And roast the ones we don't. We'll be your TBR FGMs.
fairy godmothers.
And find you the best 5-star reads, the spiciest romance, and save you from the overhyped DNFs.
So grab your favorite drink and get cozy. Welcome to Season 3. Readers, it's been a hot minute since we talked.
You listen to us every week, multiple times a week.
But we haven't had a heart-to-heart in a while.
We need a good gossip session.
And it is time for a reading update.
Yeah.
What are we reading? What are we going to read?
Mm-hmm.
What did we go and do yesterday?
Oh my God, surprise!
We'll get to it, I promise.
Mm-hmm.
And also a big thank you, I think, to you all, dear readers. We hit 1,000 downloads in a single month. Not even 1,000. We hit 1,200.
Yeah. Crazy.
Insane. Like, I've never seen those numbers. And then, just before that, we hit 10,000 all-time downloads.
Yeah. Insane.
It feels kind of like cringy, like YouTube started to be like, yeah, we got all these downloads, but like also kind of comforting, like a hug.
Yep. Yeah. I'm glad that there are 10,000 iterations of people that wanted to listen to us talk about books.
But, just so you know, the imposter syndrome level that Katie and I are operating with, we're like, maybe it's just AI stealing our voices for different voice models because there's no fucking way.
No, I immediately assumed that all of those downloads were like, AI scraping auto bots. And it's like, oh, yep, that's typical, capitalistic hellscape that we live in.
What do Millennial and Gen Z sound like?
Unfortunately, our podcast.
Yeah. But if you are one of those listeners, readers, thank you.
Thank you so much. It makes me want to cry.
It's really cool.
On that, super awkwardly emotional note, we'll just transition into other super emotional moments.
Yeah, and that was yesterday. And yesterday was we took a chance.
Mm-hmm.
We heard SenLinYu was touring.
Yeah.
Debut author.
Crazy.
National book tour. And she came to Seattle.
Yep. And I think that's crazy. And I think it kind of speaks to the experience of how SenLinYu kind of became this like national sensation. And everybody's like, what the heck? But we both bought tickets, like fairly expensive tickets with, an extra book bundle too, sight unseen. We're like, we obviously want to hear SenLinYu talk about their published work that we haven't even read at that point, because we bought these in like January.
Months ago, yes.
Yeah. Like, yep, sure, we're gonna go. But it's like that kind of speaks to the whole, crazy fact that we learned during this Q&A session about pre-sales.
Oh my God. So this publisher is Penguin House, which apparently is the largest publisher in the whole world. Most pre-ordered debut book ever.
That's insane to me that we kind of always, as a society, kind of discount the, pop girlies who kind of like fixate on something and they're like, this is my whole personality. It's like, well, we have buying power now. Okay, 750,000 copies pre-ordered, sight unseen. We're like, yeah, we're going to read this.
Okay, and on top of that, so the place that hosted this author event is called Third Place Books. It's, shoreline north of Seattle a little bit. Their 28-year history, the single highest grossing single author event ever.
Love it.
Nearly 30 years.
Yeah.
To an author who has never been officially published before.
Yeah, crazy. I just love the power of the fanfic girlies. We're like, we're going to come out here. And girlies is also like an inclusive term. That is gender non-specific. You're a fanfic girly in the heart.
we were commenting when we first got our seats in here, and it was probably a couple hundred people.
Mm-hmm.
We have never been more surrounded by our own demographic ever.
Yeah. Nope. This feels a bit sacrilegious, but it kind of felt like we were all going to church. Like we had all read the same 1,000-page book.
Or an Avon makeup party.
Full throwback.
Right?
Thankfully, we're not being sold like questionable products and, a money
Here's a lipstick
scheme
that will live for 100 years.
We're all just, fanatics about a
Mhm.
necromancy book of, like, dark romance.
Mhm.
Don't look too much into the questionable,
But the care with which everyone was holding their copies of Alchemized,
Oh, yeah.
just as if it was the Holy Bible.
Yup. Yeah, dude, the parallels were absolutely there. It was insane.
Yeah, I'm still kind of recovering from the event, and, I kinda had mixed feelings going into this. I went to the Bridgerton author event.
I was about to say it'll be interesting for you to kinda, like, compare the
There
2.
is no comparison.
Oh.
This is like going to a college lecture, and that was like going to, I don't know, a high school cookie bake-off.
Oh, I kind of respect that though, because you were talking about that you came away from it feeling like you learned something, and that's exactly the experience that I had. It's like
Pages of notes.
yeah, I love the fact that Jordan was sitting next to me during this event, and I'm just, like, staring into space like, "Wow, there's so many, like, women here, like, this is a crazy experience," and Jordan is, like, hurriedly writing all of these, like, pages of notes, and I'm like, "You are the responsible one in this relationship, like, thank you for, taking the responsibility of this for me."
Well, I think it was interesting. You pointed it out that, SenLinYu in some of her other interviews and articles has like very pointedly said that she's kind of not comfortable with, public speaking and some of
Mhm.
these more outward facing events. And so I was really curious how she was going to be like presenting herself.
Yeah.
And when she walked out on stage and she opened her mouth and the first words out of her mouth, I'm like, "Oh, honey." She has the sweetest, softest
Yeah.
like, I could listen to her forever. Like,
Oh,
she has a
yeah.
very kind-sounding voice. But,
Mhm.
like, when you read Alchemized, if you haven't read it yet, it's the darkest shit you've ever read in your life. And you think, like, "Oh,
Yeah.
the author of someone like that of a book like this is
Yeah.
gonna, like, I don't know, growly?"
Yeah. It's so funny because I felt the exact same way, like, I had read some of SenLinYu's Substack articles, and I kind of had, like, a voice in my head, and then, SenLinYu started talking during the interview, and I'm like, "That is not what I
No!
expected."
Commanding and authoritative
Yeah!
and that's
A
not
little bit, like, deeper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not a dig
Crazy.
on her at
No.
all, like, it's just this dichotomy of someone who is so, like, presenting in this sweet, kinda soft manner,
Mhm.
pulled this shit out of her
Yeah,
soul and
dude.
was like, "I'm going to fuck humanity right now and all of your reading lives and make you feel the deepest, darkest emotions you've ever read reading a book."
Yep. But then it's like, "Hello,
"Hi, I'm
Kiki." I
sending you."
loved it so much. And I kind of respect not feeling comfortable maybe, and maybe that's not the right term, but, like, asking for questions ahead of time so that you can kinda come up with, like, a more composed response. Because I feel like that kind of does a good service to the people asking the questions. Because you actually get a response that
It's
is, like
thoughtful.
yeah, meaningful, like, actually kind of puts what the author wants to tell you about. So I respected that because I could not fucking imagine a live time,
Absolutely not.
Q&A session and somebody pulls out some kind of, like, crazy question. You got me fucked up. There is no fucking way.
But the scale of this event too,
Yeah.
because, we talked about the book pre-sales and, how, like, large the attendance was for this event. But so you and I went, and we went with Rob's wife
Mhm.
because she also listened to Alchemized, read
Yep.
Alchemized. And we pull up into the parking lot and, in the event warnings, they're like, "Oh, there's plenty of parking." We pulled in and there's a line around the building to just get in the doors.
Yep.
Like it's, 2004 and Harry Potter 3 is coming out in the movie theaters.
Yep, it felt like the Twilight, new moon midnight premiere. I was like, "Am I having, like, a time travel moment here? Because 'Cause I'm pretty sure it's, like, high school again, and we're
Mhm.
all lining up." Crazy. Did not expect that, but I also and I loved the little, blast from the past.
Mhm. It was super cool.
Crazy.
We did have some kind of, I don't know, thoughts on
Mm.
how is it the host? Not
Interviewer,
interviewer?
host, Q&A leader,
Mhm.
but, general title.
Yeah. And I don't wanna get I hesitate to critique anyone who has the the bravery to get up on stage in front of hundreds of people. That takes
Mhm.
its own skill.
Yeah.
But I was a little off put by the manner in which they were asking questions to Sinlin Yu
Mhm.
and the way they were framing the questions. It seemed
Yeah.
like it was more of a focus on me. And so the host that they got to do the questions and host this whole thing was another author.
Mhm.
I forget her name.
Isabel Kenya, she wrote Vampires of El Norte.
Mhm.
It was just a little off-putting, but I also can respect if I don't understand maybe that, like, you also wrote your own book and all of a sudden you're kind of, like, exposed to a large body of people who might be, like, a potential market that you kind of wanna, like, market yourself, but it kind of felt, like, out of place. Like, when you're interviewing something, you should be almost like a bystander and just kind of, like, pushing them along to, like, continue their,
Mhm.
explanations of things. It shouldn't be like a sympathizing, empathizing moment.
The questions always felt like, "Oh, let me tell you how much of a fan I am and how excited in my perspective on the book,"
Yeah.
rather than being a conveyance for the audience's questions
Yeah.
and for the author to just address the public. It
Yeah.
was more of a, like, vying for attention kind of thing, which
Mhm.
maybe that was just I felt protective of SenLinYu. I'm like,
Yeah.
don't you dare ask her
Yeah.
that."
Yeah. I feel like it's like a skill though, that when you're an interviewer of people, you kind of have to take this like third person omniscient like presence where it's
Mhm.
like I'm just trying to like move the conversation along. But that's a very like specific skill set. But I kind of think in these like venues where there's like a lot of audience that you might it would be better served maybe to have, like, a professional, like, journalist or an interviewer come in instead of, like,
Barbara
another
Walters, yeah.
yeah, than, like, a regular, like, author, but I also understand, like, capacity for that. It's
Exactly.
a bookstore. Should we get into the, like, college seminar that we were
We
for free?
We learned so much, and we will do our best to convey accurately what we listened to, what we learned. I tried to stay, like, quote as much as possible when I was
Mhm.
taking notes, so if we deviate from what was actually said, apologies in advance, and
Yeah.
we will issue a correction.
Author's interpretation.
Mhm.
I will also say, though, that SenLinYu has a Substack channel that you can look through, and a lot of the questions that they answer during this interview, similar answers can be found in the Substack articles. We both read them. They're insane, crazy, cool syllabus for a college course.
Mhm.
Super interesting, but if, you know, between this, podcast episode and the Substack articles, it was basically like you were there with us. So,
So where do we start?
dude, I think the transition of Manacled into a published work is probably where we should start because it's apparently the most controversial. And I understand the controversy. I also understand where Senlin Yu is coming. I kind of feel like I fall in the middle still. I don't know that I have a particular opinion on either side.
What they kind of revisited over and over again is that how overwhelming it got once Manacled was like got traction.
Yeah.
Like 16 million downloads, I think, is what they were advertising.
And I can kinda speak to this point from, like, the Dramini, community perspective that there was all of a sudden this, like, outpouring of interest on Book Talk and TikTok, and people started marketing the books and, like, copies of them and kind of, like, monetizing in a way that's not entirely legal, and I kinda think it puts Senlin Yu in a weird position where she might be, like, legally liable for the things that are happening. It's like, okay, so people are, like, marketing this book that's not really a book,
Mhm.
that's all copyright material.
So they referenced the Organization for Transformative Works,
Mhm.
which I think you've talked about before.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit more about that?
So this is the parent organization, I guess, that kind of governs Archive of Our Own. It's sort of this, like, body of people, and I'm almost positive that Naomi Novik, oh my god, is, like, a founding member of this organization, but it's the fanfic community who are like, "We are making transformative works. It's technically copyright material, but we're putting it into, like, a new world, and this is, like, a derivative of it legally. This is, like, we're not selling it, we're just doing it for funsies, it's fine." And so they do a lot of, like, legal outreach work and kind of, like, protective and, protecting fanfic as, like, a venue of
Creative outlet.
yeah, yeah. So incredible, but Tinlin Yu was like, "I had to talk to their lawyers. Help me."
Well, and we both read Manacled. Like,
Mhm.
it is as transforming as Alchemized is in a different way.
Yeah.
For Sinlin Yu, she was trying to kind of get a hold of that, and I think it seemed like she kind of bowed to the fact that, oh, I need to do something with this.
Yeah.
But also, she'd put so much work into Manacled in the first place. Like, why waste, years of work?
Yeah. I kind of think that's where I understand both perspectives. Like, I understand that this is a derivative work and it can't necessarily be completely removed from the Harry Potter fanfic origins of it. But I also understand from SenLinYu's perspective that one, that this is legally going out of her control. Like, she can't really, or they can't really control like all these derivatives that people are selling and making money off of. But also, there's kind of like a protective nature of that too, that they wrote this work that people are monetizing and she legally can't make money off of it, but like other people are illegally. Like that would kind of sit wrong with me too. But then also, like, I'd want to make my work into this, like, this is my own story because it is so removed from kind of the origins of it. So I
My
understand. I understand it's complicated, but I get it.
There's a lot of, kind of back and forth is, if you endorse Alchemist or you read Alchemist, you're endorsing Harry Potter and J.K.
Hmm.
Rowling. And my sense is every work is derivative
Yeah.
because if you are a writer, almost certainly you're a reader. And at what point do you separate, like, oh, I read about elves one time. Does that mean like Lord of the Rings or some Grimm's fairy tale from 500 years ago? Is this derivative work?
Hmm.
So I think it's an easy case to make for people to be like, "Oh, well, because you started here, it's this thing, so you can't do that." But, like, look at any book, at any like, archetypes exist for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And tropes exist for a reason because they've been done before and they're gonna be done again.
Hmm.
It's like there's no original music, it's just slightly variations on, like, what's been done for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So, I guess I am less on the, like, Harry Potter kind of start, like,
Hmm.
doesn't matter to me
Yeah.
because especially once you get into Alchemist and you start reading it, you realize it is not Harry Potter
Yeah.
by any means.
Yeah. And I I am definitely taking this like third party, like, I understand both sides. And I know that can be kind of problematic from a perspective, but I do. I understand that in Alchemized being published and getting so much publicity that inherently it's going to also create kind of a publicity bubble for J.K. Rowling and kind of their questionable views about trans community and very like damaging. But also, when you write kind of a criticism and something that is like removed from that base, like it's still going to draw attention to it because you have to understand the base to then understand the derivative work. So it's like that's just kind of inherent.
Right.
Like
Make it
there's no
mine.
way that SenLinYu could take control of something that they produced without it also being. So again, I see both sides. I'm definitely taking a, Switzerland kind of perspective here, but to kind of explain both sides.
But on a lighter note, you
Mhm.
mentioned before SenLinYu came out on stage is that the book was dedicated to Jamie,
Yeah.
for Jamie. And we're like, "Who the fuck is Jamie?" Right? Like
I did like a full, like, deep dive FBI agent. Like, who the fuck is this person? Because I went through the dedications at the end, and Jamie was not SenLinYu's husband. So I was like, who the fuck is Jamie? Like, is this a best friend? Is this like a editor? Is this like an agent? And we found in like a separate fanfic. This is the Snape one, right?
Mhm.
What is it?
Oh,
Don't Go Gentle.
Do Not Go Gentle.
Yeah. It was dedicated to a Jamie, which I'm assuming is the same Jamie in the Alchemized dedication, James Thiel, which is SenLinYu's beta reader.
So, in the course of her interview, she says she ran a sample of Alchemized by her beta reader. Beta reader? I just think beta fish.
I do too.
For me.
I think Omega Verse, but
But then, like, SenLinYu says, "Who is very mean." But they approved of it.
I love that.
And that, to me, to dedicate Alchemized to your beta reader, like, is a true like, that's a writer who truly understands, like, necessity of good editing, of good beta readers who provide feedback, and that you can't write for the masses in a bubble and just assume that everyone is gonna love it. And the fact that this is 1,000 pages long, and she dedicates her first debut novel that sells out, that has record sales to her beta reader, like,
Mhm.
you go, SenLinYu, like and Jamie, like, whoever that person is and their editing skills, like, man.
Yeah, we will link it in the show notes, but James Thiel, who I'm assuming is Jamie, put together kind of this like master course kind of expose on how they go about beta reading. Super interesting. This person is like a professional editor, if not, in name, in act.
They work for Penguin House. Let's get real.
Dude, this is crazy because both Jordan and I have done, like dabbling in kind of the professional writing, editing world. And it's a fucking chore. It's a work. It's almost kind of sometimes equivalent to the work that the author is doing to kind of go through and take a critical lens. Oh my God, dude. They're both, we give them so many props between the two of them. Crazy, but so cute. I love that.
It was amazing. But this kind of gets into some of the more meatier discussions at the event about, comments on the creation of Alchemized, specifically, like, what were you experiencing that led you to write something like this? And, like, what were the foundations of the world building? And that was, I felt like, the most lectury, in the best way possible, point of the discussion, where she talks about, wanting to convey, like, her personal experience of female suffering being erased, which is a huge theme of Alchemized.
Yeah.
And then also exploring the complexity of, like, being human and not writing this aspirational experience where, like, oh, yeah, she, like, picked up a sword and she had magical powers and she, defeated evil and won and everything turned out hunky-dory and, like, Alchemized... Hunky-dory? I'm 60.
It's true, though. The hunky-dory ending.
And she, like, Alchemized is not that in any sense of the world. But then we get into, SenLinYu talking about Neoplatonism,
oh my God,
capitalism, early Christianity, and how alchemy combines metallurgy,
dude,
and immortality. Like, I'm reading my notes because I don't.
Honestly, though, because I feel like if some of my college lectures were more in this vein, I probably would have paid attention more. Because just the way that SenLinYu was talking about all of the influences in their work, and that's interesting. It's a takeaway that I feel like both Jordan and I kind of like stuck in our brain, was that SenLinYu talked about writing as like, jumping into it first. And SenLinYu was like, I put it off for so many years because I thought that I needed to get more perspective. And, a couple of years would go by and it's like, I still need more perspective before I start writing. And then SenLinYu was like, why don't I just, I'm never going to get to the point. Let me just give it a try. And I feel like that kind of speaks to an experience that anyone that has like tried to write has kind of also felt. But then,
she pulls this shit out.
It's like, I have not taken, a doctoral level alchemy.
We want to talk about the physical and spiritual experiences of like the human condition and how like men represent the physical condition. I'm like, I did not sign up for this.
Nope, but I am enjoying it. I just don't know what to do with that information now.
I really enjoyed her anecdote about necromancy and what inspired that, because she talked about like a recollection she had with a friend who they were discussing organ donation, and that particular friend was vehemently opposed to organ donation. Don't touch my dead body afterwards. Like,
this is mine.
It would never occur to me to have that perspective. Like, I'm an organ donor too, and it's just like, I'm dead. I'm not using them. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But this led SenLinYu to this kind of philosophical like dilemma of, okay, well, what if you could use dead bodies to power an army? That is obviously saving lives and reusing stuff that wouldn't be used anyway. But then this kind of also leads down the path of like, where does this decline in society begin? Which is, if you're willing to use dead bodies, what else are you willing to use those dead bodies for?
Yeah.
And when you read Alchemized, you realize, oh, like they can animate dead bodies to be servants and slaves and work in mines. Like, that's kind of bad.
Yeah, there's some moral quandaries here. And I feel like it was also interesting because SenLinYu talked about the impact that Manacled had on communities that she didn't necessarily think would be impacted by it. She talked about writing Manacled from like 2018 to 2019 and people commenting and being like, people wouldn't, question medical decisions. And then there was COVID.
COVID, yeah.
And then obviously like the outbreak too of the like Ukraine-Russian war. And SenLinYu was talking about how there were people in a war zone who were like, I would go back and read Manacled because it seemed like the only, perspective of someone that also understood like what I was going through. And so it's just like pulling in these like real world events and then also all of this, textual evidence and then conversations she's having about organ donation and then putting it into one book. Crazy.
Well, the theme that SenLinYu revisits consistently, both in the book, in the acknowledgement section, in like throughout the book itself as part of the theme, and then again at this event, was the acknowledgement of the dichotomy of working in a field that is also considered like a vocation, like a life's calling, like doctors, nurses, teachers, and how no matter what you do, like a doctor could do their best to save a patient, they still die. They don't get a thank you for trying to save that patient. They just get nothing but recrimination. Words.
It was there. I got it.
You know the word I mean. For like not succeeding,
Yeah.
and that they shouldn't expect any kind of awards or pay or gratitude for working in something that their soul is felt drawn to.
Mm-hmm.
And so her readership being like frontline nurses in the Ukraine war, and SenLinYu themselves with their own experiences kind of wrapped up in this, like, okay, there is this invisible war going on in every conflict.
Yeah.
If you read Alchemised, you see the parallels with World War II pretty strongly. And then the silent war of intelligence work, which is a huge aspect of Alchemised too.
Yeah.
And she kind of shines a light on it, and she never, it's like a light, but like with a red filter on it.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of interesting because it speaks to one part of her Substack article where they were talking about let my brain percolate here. Oh, the women's view of World War II and how that was kind of extinguished in favor of this kind of like nationalistic rhetoric that was a little bit more digestible. And specifically, the line that SenLinYu put in the article was a quote from one of the books. And it was basically that the way that I talk about war, it makes it sound so insane that no one in the right mind would ever do this like horrible, insane, non-heroic, disgusting, people die continually. And SenLinYu took that and then wanted to put that into Alchemized. And you feel it. It's like, why the fuck are all of these people fighting? Like, I get there's like, religious tension going on, but it's like people are dying super horrifically. Like, this is yucky. But it's like, that's very much conveyed in the book. Like, I got it, girl.
Another topic that came up throughout this discussion is, what is Alchemized? Like, what is this genre? What books inspired it? And this was a conversation we had on the way to the event. Like,
Yep.
Isn't this romantasy? Because it's a romance, like, it's mostly character-driven.
Mm-hmm.
Their relationship, the war seems to be a backdrop. Yeah, it's 1,000 pages long and there's lots of shit going on. But ultimately, there is a happy ending.
Mm-hmm. And some of the plot doesn't progress unless it was because of the romance.
And we have a completely different world. Like, this does not take place on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
It's a completely fictional kingdom.
There's 2 moons.
There is a sense of magic, and we'll kind of get into what she defined as fantasy versus science.
Mm-hmm.
So how is this not romantasy?
Yeah.
And we were like, it has to be romantasy. And then she just blew our minds, and she's like, of course it's not romantasy. It's gothic fiction. It's gothic romance. And we're like,
what? Yes,
yeah.
but that is controversial.
You right.
Yeah, I don't like it, though.
But it kind of ties into the books that inspired Alchemized, which was one of the questions. And she kind of blew everyone out of the water, and she's like, Frankenstein. We're like, obviously.
Yep. Literal direct quote from Alchemized. If he's a monster, then I'm his creator. Whoa, okay, that's Frankenstein in one little, bundle.
But then SenLinYu pulls this line out, and she's like, well, what would happen to the monster if a woman made it?
Mm-hmm.
If Helen made the monster?
Yeah.
And then there you get Alchemized.
Yep. They fall in love. Oopsie.
But then she kind of like flips it on its entire head, and she's like, oh yeah, the other book that inspired me was Mansfield Park.
It was so funny. So I was sitting in the audience, and I have not read a lot of, like, base literature works or whatever. SenLinYu says Mansfield Park, and I feel Jordan's, like, psychic energy just to, like, explode, like, atomic bomb going off next to me, and I'm like, apparently that meant something to her.
Okay, once you see it, like, once you hear it, you cannot not make the connection. So Mansfield Park is a lesser-known Jane Austen novel.
Oh, what?
I know!
Oh, okay.
Okay, let me
Whoa.
we're gonna diverge, we're gonna go into
I was about
Austen
to say,
land.
I need the Wikipedia article from Jordan of Mansfield Park.
So a lot of people love Jane Austen because they love Elizabeth. She's the spunky, fiery, like, fuck you heroine.
Mhm.
Fanny Price is the heroine of Mansfield Park, and she is the quintessential soft girl, lets her family walk all over her because she just wants a sense of belonging. She's in love with her second cousin, maybe first cousin.
Ooh.
But so she grows up as the poor relation in a wealthy household, and they take her in because she is one of, like, too many siblings. And so it's like a favor to, like, the poor sister, right?
Mhm.
And Fanny is nothing but obliging and compliant,
Mhm.
and does what everyone asks her to do. And she's just the kindest, most humble, sweetest Austen character you've ever read in your entire life. Maybe second only to Anne Elliot from
Mm.
Persuasion. But once you like listen to, Mansfield Park or read it and understand Fanny Price as a character, Helen is that exactly.
Mm.
She just wants a sense of belonging because she's this outcast in Palladia.
Palladia.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Those episodes are going to be tough.
Yep.
But Helen just wants to please everyone around her and be accepted as an alchemist.
Mhm.
And she's willing to do anything and sacrifice all aspects of herself to just be accepted. And that is Fanny Price.
Yeah.
So Frankenstein meets Mansfield Park
Crazy.
is Alchemized.
And that kind of also speaks to SenLinYu also kind of put in a tidbit about how it's very intentional that Helena is an immigrant in this society. And SenLinYu, I'm probably going to butcher the quote, but basically that Helena was very aware at all times of, like, having to be grateful for the altruism of other people, but it's kind of like that subservient relationship almost, that she's there because of their, generosity. And SenLinYu was talking about how that kind of, like, mirrors her, like, personal experiences. So that was, like, a interesting little tidbit there, because it kind of reminds me of, who is the other sibling in Pride and Prejudice who spends time with the family in London? And they're like, "That's not fair that they get to go." The older sister, the blonde one.
Jane?
Jane. I feel like it's kind of similar to Jane's experience, too. She's the very, like, nice, obliging, and then she gets, like, taken up by the sister's family and then goes to London, and then it's like, "Oh, it doesn't really work out, but, like, okay, I'm just here."
The setting, especially of Alchemized, is like this Victorian industrial, like, on the brink of, like, technological revolution.
Mhm.
Like, there's vehicles,
Yeah.
but weirdly,
That was the funniest part of these Substack articles, because SenLinYu, so obviously in Harry Potter, they can apparate and just, like, pop up somewhere else. And SenLinYu was talking about the difficulty of trying to come up with, like, modes of transportation. I cannot imagine, because it's like, do they take a car to get to the other side of the island, or they just, like, walk for 2 hours?
I think it was genius on her part to make it such a condensed world.
Yeah.
Like, everything's vertical, so you don't have to travel.
Oh, that is true. Little, like,
Mhm.
fixer-upper.
But, like, kind of more on the genre
Mhm.
of what Alchemized is.
Are we gonna talk about the crazy-ass rabbit hair comparison?
Yes, I
Dude.
I couldn't even write it down coherently. All I have is overlap between horror and romance as a genre.
Dude. Crazy. This, again, if you don't have the opportunity to listen to one of these kind of question and answer, this specific question is talked about in the Substack articles, but it's the comparison, contrasting of romance and horror is similar to the contrasting of a rabbit and a hare, where a rabbit is, this, like, cute, fluffy little bunny, and a hare is kind of like, they're similar, but that's like the fucking weird version.
It's Donnie Darko compared to the Easter Bunny.
It's like there's something wrong with that. And then SenLinYu talks about how horror is kind of romance, but, like, in the extremes, the like obsession, the, kidnapping, and this is like my full encompassing, this is all my brain can focus on. And it kind of speaks to like the, eruption of dark romance as a subgenre too. It's like, does that bridge the gap between romance and horror? Because like a lot of those are just like stalkers.
Because SenLinYu said that they enjoyed reading and writing romance, but she did not, or they did not want to write a romance that was aspirational. She wanted to show like the monstrosity of love and what happens when like love is pushed to its very extremes. And again, read Alchemized. That is what this book is all about.
Yeah.
But, AI educated me on like the overlap between horror and romance. And like you read the bullets that it says, and it's like the intensified stakes and symbolic monsters and power dynamics. That's, if we think about other books that have similar themes to Alchemized, Master of Crows.
We're going to talk all about that.
That is going to be another discussion.
Grace Draven.
But that's what makes the romantic tension so much more extreme. Like, think of Twilight. Death is always a possibility. And it's overlapping, like, are they going to suck all the blood out of my body and kill me? Or are we going to fall in love? And it's this constant, it's the will they, won't they of romance, but also the will they, won't they of, is death near?
Yeah. That is an interesting observation. This just occurred to me. In the second book, you know how Bella goes through a full depressive episode because she's so obsessed with Edward? Is that not a little bit, genre transgressional into the horror? Because she there's a full-on several-month episode where she is, going through it because she is so in love with Edward and he just dipped out. Ooh. Interesting observation there.
And I think that's something that's not acknowledged or talked about, or maybe there's an unwillingness to recognize that, we're swallowing romantasy as a genre, by the mouthful, just pour it down our throats. And everyone's like, oh, I wish my book boyfriend was like my real boyfriend. But do you really? No, you don't. That's a level of toxicity and obsession and darkness that would destroy your life if it actually happened.
Yeah. I feel like that kind of speaks to, obviously, we don't want to get too into Alchemized because we're going to have, way too many episodes talking about that book. But the end tidbit where, Helena sees Cain is kind of like a full, complex, flawed person, but she's still in love with him. But the world sees Cain as a war criminal who committed war crimes. So, not really a book boyfriend. I get why you would think that, but he is still a war criminal.
He murdered thousands of people.
Yep, he needs to, go to trial in The Hague. That's not something you just skip past. Yeah, so not really aspirational. Love the book boyfriend thing, but maybe
this
don't.
One.
Yeah, maybe don't use that here.
But it doesn't lessen your
attraction.
Yeah. I hesitate to say enjoyment because, this is like a nonstop read. You do nothing but read this book once you start it, if you can afford to. Enjoyment is a weird word because it is so dark.
Yeah. I feel very similar reading this as I did to reading A Handmaid's Tale, where it's super interesting. You're in it, you're psychologically attached to all of the characters, you want to know what happens, but it's emotionally exhausting. And I think that kind of speaks to why we jumped immediately to Allie Hazelwood after reading this.
Right?
It's I need some kind of fucking rom-com.
Palate cleanser, please.
But it is interesting that we both jumped into Not in Love, which is less of her rom-com-y one and more very intense, sexual romantic relationship that kind of evolves. It's interesting that we both went there. That's crazy.
Some of the more, I guess, educational aspects of the author event is I felt so validated by this. They really enjoy being deep in POV. But it was interesting to me that they said they preferred writing third person limited because writing in first person can be extremely limiting if the writing and the character isn't outwardly focused. And she quotes, or they quote, you end up with a lot of navel gazing in first person.
Jordan immediately cackled in the middle of this. Everyone else was very like, oh, yes, navel gazing. And Jordan is like losing her fucking mind. But I get it though, because that's what we talk about with all of these fucking like book talk books. Dude.
I cannot. So I think a good example of a first-person narrative that doesn't do that is Daughter of the Forest.
Oh, dude.
You don't even notice it's first person because it's so outward facing.
Yeah. Wow.
But think of the skill it requires to write like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
And that's kind of an interesting observation, too, that if you're too outward facing, you can't be too definitive of a character.
Mhm.
It's kind of like inherent in the Mary Sue treatment that if it is so much, outward facing, you don't really have an idea of who the main character is.
Mhm.
That's an interesting kind of
But
intellectual study.
yet SenLinYu feels like they can convey emotional depth and like character perspective by writing third person limited.
Mm-hmm.
And she talked about using this expressive reticence, which, man, I felt like I wasn't qualified to be in this lecture.
Yeah.
At this point.
We're at like the 400 and this is at the like 500,
Yeah.
600 level.
Where she compared it to like sumi.
Yeah, like art forms.
Yeah, it's like Japanese ink painting where the focus is on negative space and letting the brain fill in what it's supposed to look like based on like these hints at like specific brushstrokes. And she does the same thing. She referenced the emotional thesaurus, but noted that instead of describing, oh, they felt angry or they felt sad, she would describe like, oh, like their eyes narrowed or like the hair stood up on the back of their neck to kind of convey like this is what the physical reactions are for the emotional state and let the reader fill in what that emotional state should be.
Yeah.
Fucking brilliant.
Crazy. And I feel like Jordan and I, when we were talking about it after the event, we kind of have a similar thought about the whole thing, though, that what SenLinYu is talking about is not necessarily like new or like
it's not
innovative.
transformative.
Yeah, but it has almost become new and transformative in this like book talk land that we're kind of living in, that authors aren't necessarily like taking the time to kind of like create these actual like sensation experiences, and it's more like, nope, this is my character, she's mad, you feel mad, this is why she feels mad, next scene. Instead, SenLinYu is like, no, you're a little bit smarter than that. Like, we're gonna, use your brain a little bit, like, fill in the blanks here.
Showing, not telling.
Yeah. But it's crazy that we've kind of gone, like, full circle that almost is transformative, that it's so rare in the books that we're consuming now that it's like, wow, that's crazy.
They were talking about it in the sense that so much is written for visual platforms,
Yeah.
like visual media. Like everyone is writing books so they can be turned into movies, and that's how they're written. But they were focused on writing and leaning into what literature can deliver to the reading experience, which is an emotional state like this I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah.
Like it's the sense that you get when you can't stop reading because you feel what the characters are feeling, and you only get that reading a book.
Yeah. And it's interesting, too, because I know that SenLinYu approached writing this book from the perspective that they wanted it to be kind of a literature experience and not kind of a audio-visual experience. But even reading this, I'm like, this would be a bomb-ass fucking movie. Because all of the detail kind of like fills in the picture for you, and you like feel in the experience, and you're like there with Helena and this like trauma and craziness. But it's like, I think, again, it speaks to the like book talk reticence to create like a fully conceptualized story and experience. And like, yeah, it's this cinematic experience, but it's like, okay, but you're like still missing some stuff. Like, because I immediately, as I was reading this, I'm like, this would be such a fucking bomb-ass fucking movie. I would be like watching it, and then there's like zombies coming out, and then there's like magic, and then like all the lights are dark, but you're still there, and you're like, hear the panting of like people fighting, and dude. So then it's kind of like amusing that, SenLinYu was like, no, it's a literary experience. It's like, I'm watching a movie in my head.
Well, she said it's a literary experience, but she also sold the movie rights for like $3 million.
Dude,
so
reading it, I'm like, this is obviously the movie rights were sold. This is incredible.
This movie's going to happen in the next 5 years. There's no way that a book is this successful and it's not made.
Yeah. Which is interesting, though, when we compare it to ACOTAR, because the movie rights to that were sold to Hulu, Disney, to make like a TV series about it. But I feel like Sarah J. Maas kind of struggled with the whole like, showing, not telling aspect of it, and I almost wonder if they ran into issues where it's like you have all of this, like, narrative, whatever, but it's, like, not necessarily enough to, like, create a full story that people would, like, resonate with, but then, like, SenLinYu put in all of the fucking literary work required, and then it's, like, easily transformed into a script because we still don't have an ACOTAR movie.
And I think that's because, I mean, you can visualize the world that Alchemized is in.
Mhm.
Like, you can feel the darkness and the grittiness and the grossness.
Yeah.
But, like, ACOTAR is kind of a fever dream. You're like, "Oh, they're in a garden. Oh, they're in a fall court,"
Yep.
or, "Oh, they're having a bonfire party."
Everybody's beautiful.
Yeah.
Honestly, though. And I don't wanna, like, pit, 2 giants against each other, but it does kinda speak to this show don't tell experience because everyone jokes about the whole watery bowels thing of ACOTAR. That's
What?
that's the reoccurring, like, physical experience that Feyre all of the books, she feels watery bowels.
Oh, no.
And that's supposed to convey, anxiety and worry, but that's the only phrase that ever gets, used.
So, there were some other points throughout the author event, the author interview, where they talked about SenLinYu's experience growing up
Mhm.
and what kind of led her to, write the things that she chose to write, both in fanfiction land and Alchemized. And I don't know that we need to get into those details. There were some kind of what I felt were invasive personal questions that were asked during the interview, which I would hope that I think SenLinYu was able to pre-screen some of the questions that were asked,
Mhm.
but it felt kind of obvious. Like, one of the questions was kind of jokingly, "Who hurt you?"
Yeah.
To write Alchemized. And I'm like, if you know the themes of Alchemized, which deal with
Yeah.
severe depression and suicidal ideation and this war-torn thing and sexual assault and all of this, maybe you could take an educated guess
Yeah.
and just assume
Yeah.
and not make this a public forum.
Yeah. I get the kind of joking manner that this question was probably submitted with, but when it kind of demands an answer, you're obviously going to get into things that are maybe something not shared with a whole group of strangers.
Mhm.
So I do kind of, like, sympathize with SenLinYu that I think it would be difficult to put this out into the world and then have to also field all of these questions of, like, "Can you talk about the darkest time in your life and tell us how you were feeling, and did that, influence Alchemize?" It's like, yeah, fucking
It did.
obviously.
Obviously, yeah, and she was honest, and she
Mhm,
kinda revealed some aspects of what she has dealt with when she was writing Manacled and when she was writing Alchemized,
mhm.
and I applaud them for their bravery in kind of discussing that in a public format,
Yeah.
and there is, I think, sometimes a necessity when you become a public figure like SenLinYu to acknowledge feelings like that because
Mhm.
sometimes, especially in the audience and the demographic that we were surrounded in, is people don't have the means or the platform or the, I guess, the ability to acknowledge those same feelings, and so
Yeah.
seeing someone else being able to articulate that will help validate your own experiences.
Mhm.
So I can see it from that perspective, but the joking manner in which it was asked was, like, a little like,
Yeah.
"I don't like that."
Yeah. And I feel like we can also, with that, kind of, like, pay our respect to the service that it is and how difficult it is for SenLinYu to have to talk about those things because they are a public figure. Like, I think that kind of maybe sometimes gets brushed aside, that there is the expectation that they'll use their platform to talk about those things, but, like, I also can't imagine how difficult it
No.
is.
But I think a good way to end our kind of recap before we get into light and fluffy territory and we close out our reading update is the final question of the night was, what do you hope readers take away from reading Alchemized? And we've kind of touched on this a little bit throughout our discussion and our rehash of the event. But the fact that SenLinYu relayed what she did in her answer to this, I think, really speaks volumes about Alchemized as a book and what she's trying to accomplish. Do you want to?
Yeah, I feel like I have not conflicting, like, experiences with this, but I fully am on board with what she was trying to kind of explain through Alchemized, that when you have a war and you have a very, like, paternal, masculine-driven idea of heroism that in order to make that narrative, there are some people's experiences that have to be erased because it kind of introduces that like morally gray, questionable activities. And especially with everything that Helena does throughout the book is very questionable, and it kind of gets brushed aside in order to create this nationalistic rhetoric. And that was kind of what SenLinYu was trying to convey, is that when we create these, rhetorics, there's people's experiences that are completely erased. And she was specifically kind of talking about her grandma's experience in being Japanese and interred within the United States, and how, they weren't the enemy. They were in U.S. soils, U.S. citizens, but all of a sudden they were turned into the enemy, and how we kind of want to erase that from, our history, because it's this like black spot blemish on kind of this rhetoric of us being the heroes and the winners of World War II. And I fully ascribe to that. I understand it, but I do feel like I have some complicated feelings about kind of the binary nature of, women versus men, and this like heroism versus like the healer perspective that I feel like I still need to kind of like figure out. Like I was not expecting to get kind of like that gender dysphoria, experience from this conversation. But I do think that she did or they did a service of like talking about kind of the erased experiences of people on the sidelines of wars that we never want to talk about, the gory, sad, depressing aspects of war. But it's like, that's the realities of it. We should probably talk about it. That was a crazy takeaway, and it just kind of verbalizes why you feel sad after finishing this book. Because they just like leave a war-torn area and you're like, yep, that's fine. They're just living their life happy ever after.
So good news, readers.
I don't know.
Well, we're going to be covering Alchemised.
Yes.
But before we kind of get into our actual review of the book, we have some light and fluffy takes for you.
Hee.
So our next few episodes, we're going to cover Hot for Slayer.
Yes, obviously, Allie Hazelwood.
That is our Halloween week book.
Mm-hmm.
So that is coming at the end of the month. It's delicious.
Mm-hmm. It's so cute.
And then Not in Love will be immediately after this episode, so next week.
Mm-hmm. So you have a little bit of, romantic tension to, convey.
You're going to forget that darkness. And
I know. It's like you're going to be sad, but you're going to be happy about it.
And then we're going to be quickly approaching the end of season 3.
Crazy. Season 4, our 4th year of this silly,
how did that
lovable
happen?
podcast. I don't know how our readers are not sick of us mispronouncing names
every single time.
Words, being slightly drunk as we talk about things that are vaguely serious.
But we're still here.
Yep. Yeah. We're just going to keep doing our little book podcast, and we're going to love it.
Well, from our shelf to yours.
We'll see you on the next page. Hi, readers. Like what you've been hearing? Check out the Spice Archive at notanotherheroine.com to see all of our reviews and ratings. And if you'd like to support our growing library, find us on Patreon and get access to exclusive bonus content.
If you'd like to just listen, we post new episodes every Monday and Wednesday on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon. Thanks for listening.